Hi, everyone. Welcome to In Focus. This week, we're going to be talking about how to get accurate colors in your landscape photos using Lightroom and Photoshop. So let's get right to it. Hey, everyone. Welcome to In Focus with Adam Goldberg Photography and Joseph Roybal Photography. I'm Adam. Joe, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I am good. I am still in my temporary office, but life is good, getting things done. What's going on out in Colorado?
Oh, just looking out the window, watching people walk by, sun shining,
Excellent.
wearing my new shirt.
I do like the shirt. I'm glad that you're showing that one off. So
Yeah.
I have my I donate platelets superhero shirt on. So
See? It's
makes
all
me
about the shirts.
makes me
It's
makes me
all
feel
about
makes me feel like I'm giving back, you know.
right, right.
So what do we got going on this week?
For this week's episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have been doing a lot of I've been presenting this topic, often. It's been getting a lot of critical it's critically acclaimed,
Okay.
in the academy.
Excellent.
Um, Yep. And so what it is talking about color. And in landscape work, a lot of it's mostly I use it for my landscape work. I'm sure some people could utilize it for, you in architecture and probably even some portrait work there. But what we're doing and what we're going to talk about is how I take a photo out of Lightroom, take it into Photoshop, use a color wheel in Photoshop, and get the ideas of the colors that will work harmoniously. So it's color harmony.
Okay. I like that color harmony. Yeah, I don't use this, so I'm pretty interested to see how you use this and apply it and see if it's something that I could maybe add to my workflow with architecture photography. And like you said, maybe there's some other folks who can leverage this in terms of, okay, what are the right colors to be using for this photo? And I'm excited that we're going to get a little bit technical in this episode, because this is kind of some good hands-on learning for
Right.
folks that hopefully they can bring into their work and take better photos when all is said and done.
Exactly. So yeah, the whole idea with color theory, color harmony is just making sure your images are harmonious and not creating dissonance and things in there where it's like, it looks like crap.
We do not want crappy photos. That is not the goal, either as a amateur or professional photographer. You do not want to
No,
suck. Take good photos. And so hopefully this will
no.
help, right? Is that
It
the
will help. Yeah.
okay?
The idea is, yeah. And so what we'll do here is this is going to be just I don't want to say a quick nuts and bolts of it, but realistically, like, it won't take me too long showing, I'll explain my thought process. I'll explain a little bit of my workflow, and then it'll be, up to you, the viewer, to make your masterpiece.
Excellent. That sounds good. So are we jumping in Photoshop, Lightroom? Where are we headed here
Okay.
to start things
So we're
off?
going to start in Lightroom.
Okay.
You can start anywhere. You can start in Bridge, Raw, whatever you want to do. But the idea here is, I'm going to try to keep this tonight a little bit in Lightroom, since a lot of photographers today utilize Lightroom. I will be showing, though, Photoshop, because you have to work with Photoshop for this one initial piece.
Okay.
And then we'll go back to Lightroom.
Okay, great. And before we do jump into that, which I know we will in a second, do you know, is like Capture One and some of these other programs that folks use, do you know if they have kind of a similar color process, or is this really going to be specific to Lightroom, Photoshop workflow users?
Well, I mean, if you're using another one of these or platforms to process your images,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that, I don't know that any of them have specifically the color wheel that you can reference.
Okay.
And just, because like yeah. But if you just open the photo in Photoshop, you can just look at the color wheel, get an idea, and then go edit wherever you want to edit. So that's the idea with this.
Cool. Awesome. So are we good to jump into Lightroom then?
All right, so here we are in Lightroom, just going with this photograph here, taken up in Banff, near Banff, Canada, in Alberta, Canada, a year ago. What I've done here in Lightroom is I've just taken a few exposure edits, you know, highlights, shadows, kind of really worked at bringing up my histogram more to the center, because when I photographed this scene, the upper left portion of this photo was very, very, very bright. And so what I had done here was just work and try to, yeah, it was very bright. And so I had done my EV value and worked with that just to make my histogram really dark to expose for one photo, one scene, you know, one photo of the scene, that's it. So
This is a single exposure.
single exposure, yeah, single exposure, because what I wanted was, and you can see up here, you can see my 1.3 of a second, 10, 14 millimeters, ISO 64. So I really wanted to just get that water looking awesome and not having to blend a ton of images here for the sky and for the foreground. So I just went one shot, you know,
Okay.
one shot to rule them all. And so with that, you know, originally I'm going to click on reset, and this is the photograph out of camera. And so as you know, you can see this is really dark, but with proper, you know, metering and proper usage of your histogram, you can get your photo to have all that data still in the image. But so what we're talking about tonight is we're talking about color. And the image that I had worked on and finished up was, you know, I had worked on it in Photoshop a bit, and also here in Lightroom. And once this loads, it will show this is the final edit. And so the thought though is, how can we work with an image, understanding what colors or which colors blend and are harmonious, if you will, within the photograph, you know, because the idea we don't want to do is throw in a red, you know, and blue, and we don't want to create a bunch of dissonance. We want to keep it really succinct and awesome. So how do we do that? The first thing that we need to think on is understanding your key color. The key color in a photograph just simply means what is the primary color in the entire image. So what I've already done is I've taken that first photo, the raw, and I have opened it in Photoshop. And so what we have here is we have the photo, just the raw photo taken and opened directly out of Lightroom into Photoshop. And this is a really cool trick. And this is the idea here, is to show everyone just, hey, really quickly, how you can understand which colors will work well in a photo.
Okay.
Keep repeating that. And that's just the simple thought of this. So, all right, everybody has Photoshop, most likely if you have the Adobe Lightroom photo package. So hopefully this is what people will be seeing. So, okay, you open your photograph in Photoshop, and I will show now how to get the color wheel up. So going up to window up here, if this will let me do it, and just coming down to extensions and clicking on Adobe Color Themes.
Oh, okay.
You click on Color Themes and it pops open this panel that we see right here of a color wheel. It's a totally hidden little gem I've found in Photoshop. But so right here, we're looking at a color wheel. And so the things to understand about the color wheel, looking at it at a two-dimensional level here, everything in the center is white. So, you know, no color, if you will, no hue. And when we say hue and we say color, you know, we have the hue, saturation, and luminance in Lightroom, and everyone talks about hue. Hue is really just the color that's going around this color wheel. So blues, magentas, reds, oranges, you know, all of the cyans, greens, that is the hue, the color. The further you go away from the center, like these pins are, the more saturated the color is.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so the center of the color wheel is completely white. That would be the water, for example, in this photo. But just think on in any sense, it's just white. That's it. Off to the right, top, left, bottom, more saturated, fully saturated. So that is really kind of just understanding where you're working and where you're understanding. Um, we will discuss brightness in a moment, but brightness is when you think of the color wheel, if you were to think of it rotated and three-dimensional, the bottom of a color wheel is, I'm going to go ahead and click on the color picker. The bottom of the color wheel would be black if you think of it that way.
Okay.
The top of the color wheel is brighter. So that's referenced by this little guy right here, 99%. So the top of the color wheel, brightness should be 100. The bottom of the color wheel, when you think if you were to spin again this color wheel into 3-dimension, 0 on the brightness, that's blacks.
Okay.
So this is a little more complicated in the regard of just like, when people are watching this and be like, well, what's brightness? What's this? Don't stress too much about that. This is just more for like, once you start using this, it will make sense. So I just wanted to cover that.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Just a little, history 101. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave this color picker open because this is the next step. So you've got your Adobe Color Themes panel open. You've got your color wheel open. You're looking at it, and to get to the color picker again, you simply come down to this little guy down here, click on the foreground color, which is white, and it will automatically open up your color picker panel. Okay. You got that open. Now what we've got to do, and I'm just going to move this off to the right just to hide this because we don't really need it, or hide that upper portion. We don't really need. But what we need to do here is, first and foremost, pay attention to, this is the hue. And this is corollary, this correlates essentially to the color wheel. As I click and I pan around in the photograph, this little guy here is going to bop and slide around.
Okay.
What we're looking for here is which color or which hue is most obvious, is kind of like, if you think of how often it kind of sticks on a hue or a color, how often, time-wise, be our key color or our primary color that we want to work with, okay? So as I start to click in here, automatically right away, it goes to blues. And now as I just go around the photograph, we're getting some reds. We're going to get some yellows and there's greens in there just because we know that that's going to be there. But then,
are you just dragging the color picker around, or are you actually clicking?
I'm clicking and I am dragging. So here I turned on my little mouse tool. Okay. So the solid color here shows a full click, like I'm still holding it.
Yeah.
If I double click, it'll ping. Okay. So it's cool. Now we're back up into the cyans there, on the slider. And then we're going back into blue. Even if I come onto the rock, we're still in the blues. So ultimately what we're seeing, and what I would say our key color would be blue, because we've got a lot of blues up in the sky. We've got blue and cyans down here in the water. If I just click, there we are. So let's just, for the sake of it, say blue is our key color. And when we're working with color theory and harmony and, all that, without making this like super arcane and boring, all we're looking to do is find that key guy and then work with some colors that will harmonize with that to make our photograph pop and stand out and look pretty and not look crummy.
Awesome.
So I'm going to go back up into this area and kind of get more into the blues, just so we can really see this in an example. Okay, right there. And now to simply say where we are, we've got brightness at 47%. So you can see how that, brightness is relevant. You can see that it's not super far off to the right because it's not super saturated. It's just that portion of the cloud. Let's just go and let's click on OK and call that good. We set that color. And now to set the color over here, make sure that your center square of these 5 is selected. And you set selected color right here. You simply click on this guy.
Okay.
And it should, let me click here. There we go. It sets it. So that matches the color that we have over here in the left on the foreground color, and that matches the color we have right here now as the foreground color.
Very cool.
Cool. Very cool. All right. So that is step one, if you will. So now you can see these little pins. And one more thing, and another thing to mention here is when we start working with these pins in the color wheel, what we want to do is we want to try to keep these as tightly condensed as possible. And hopefully I can show that. So, all right, we've got these plotted. These are on the color wheel, but now the fun happens and we get to click on color rule. So analogous, the primary colors that or the profiles I like to work with are going to be complementary, and let's just keep this super simple to start off right there. So I clicked on complementary. Blue is our primary color. It's our, or I should say it's our key color, not primary. It's our key color in this photograph as denoted by this center swatch. Opposite of the, a complementary color of blue is going to be yellow. So we automatically know that if we introduce some warmth in the sky from that sunrise, it's going to match really well. It's blue and yellow. But we also have some other colors in here that could be really cool to work with as well. So I'm going to go to Triadic, and Triadic for me is one of my absolute favorite, because what it's going to do is it's going to show you 3 colors that you can work with, more or less, that are going to give you some really awesome complementary colors in your photograph. So we have our blue, we have some green, as you can see in the trees, and then we can have that warmth from the yellow in the sky. So this is just essentially giving you, if you think of bumper bowling with your kids, Adam, this is kind of like saying like, hey, as a photographer, if you're unsure about like which colors will work within your photograph, then this is going to give you a really good idea and a starting point to say, hey, don't throw in like some crazy like lime neon greens in this photo. Maybe don't throw in some bright neon yellows. So is that kind of making some sense
Yeah,
there?
no, this definitely makes sense. Like I said, I mean, it makes it pretty clear that, okay, you have the blue. So if you just kind of maybe do just like a little bit of green, maybe some yellow, that, like I said, it's going to balance out really well and
Cool.
complement the overall photo. So that way it looks natural. And I think
Exactly.
that's such an important thing in the photography that I do. And I know that you try and share with everybody is you want kind of that realistic representation of what you saw. And so I think this is a great
Yeah,
way to kind of get you on the path to creating an image that does match that earthly natural scene.
exactly. And that's the big thing. I think that when it comes to landscape photography, it's really easy to go crazy and wild with, filters and profiles and all that stuff. And it gets us away from the natural color that's actually in the photograph. Realistically, these are all colors that are in nature already, the greens, yellows, reds, pinks, and such. So what's also really neat here is you can take and you can click on one of these guys and you can rotate yourself a little bit just to say, hey, you know what? I want to get like, maybe, I could go a little more and get some like purples and some oranges in there. If you wanted to stretch these out a little bit, you can add a little more saturation. But like this here again is just showing you what you can work with.
Okay.
Now it comes to how do you, then implement this in your photography.
Yeah.
So in Photoshop, you really do work with the brush tool, and then you can utilize your profile picker over here and selecting the color that we've chosen. So, if you like this, style color of like, magenta, if you will, you would really just kind of bring this up, get your magenta. You can see that this is really close to that color down here.
Yep.
Clicking on OK. And, and now it's a little bit of like, kind of, I'm going to, there we go. It's, almost introducing this by painting it in to the photo. And I need to actually create a new layer down here. There we go. There we go. That'll work. Let me delete that second layer. But that's the idea of when you need to create a new layer, and then you can paint that color in. And that you do with the different colors that you want to add.
Okay.
So that's the Photoshop route. Now let's pop into, and let me delete this here, that layer 2. And let's pop into Lightroom.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are more comfortable in Lightroom. So I think
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're going to show really how to take now what we've shown here from your color wheel and apply that to now making some tweaks and edits in Lightroom that build off of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we have in our memory bank, we have kind of some of those magentas and, and warms. We could work with a little bit of violet. We've got some greens. Like, we know what we can work with in here. And so, Lightroom, what I love with Lightroom is being able to simply just do a few clicks. You've got, let's just go ahead here and let's do a grad filter. And with the grad filter, we can just lay this in on the sky.
And so this gradient filter is basically just going to allow us to selectively pick a part of this photo that we want what you're going to do here applied to, and have it kind of gradually fade out, correct? So that way it's not like a harsh line or something like that, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's, add some of that color, work with some of these colors in the photograph here in Lightroom, because like I said, Lightroom we're a lot more familiar with. I think a lot of people are. So if we take, and for me, when I'm working with the sky, I'm going to say like this right-hand side of the sky in the upper right could be that like kind of purplish, violet, magenta color that we had. The left side of the sky, warmer. And then the foreground, we could kind of warm that up as well. And that right there is going to be our kind of like triad, if you will, of colors. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click on the graduated filter here. And again, like Adam had mentioned, this is like, you think of graduated neutral density filters in the field that, and you can look these up if you're not familiar with them, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take, and I'm just going to change the tint of this photo, or this grad filter that I'm going to pull down in just a moment. So I'm going to take this up and maybe make it a little more like, on that magenta front, if you will, and go into the photo here and just click and drag this down to set that. And if I take this up, it'll give me an idea if that's going to look funky or not. Because if I also need to, I can just simply reset that tint, and I could come down here into the color, bring this guy over here, and again, we have 0. If you think about, like, we have the hue over here, and this is the color. We also have the saturation being 0, basically meaning almost like white.
Mm-hmm.
But if we think of like the color or the hue, just, think about taking that up just a small amount. You can see how that's already putting that in the sky, a little bit of the purple, that, magenta, if you will, working within the blue. So, keeping that color, that hue, like we had in Photoshop, in that zone. So just for the sakes of demonstration, all right, a little bit of purple in that sky. So I'm going to go ahead and just call that good. Now let's do the other side for the other side of the sky there. So I'm going to go ahead and grab new, and this side for sure, let's make this more of like a temperature warmer, warming up that sky for that sun. And I'm going to go ahead and click and drag this guy in from the upper left. And now you can kind of see that this purple on the right is a little too strong. You can adjust that just by going back to it and kind of feathering that out. But the idea is to say like, all right, we've got this really nice warmth in the upper left. We got this kind of like cool, magenta purple in the upper right. Now, what about the foreground? What about the bottom? I'm going to do another one, just clicking on new. And then I'm going to hold shift and click and drag sets a straight line as you drag this up. So it really helps kind of help keep that line, the gradient line horizontal. Cool. So this here is kind of warming up the foreground, but you can see that it's making the foreground look a little funky. So if I dial this back, you know, I could even, if I wanted to, I could take it and go more along the blue front as well. Which
Yeah, it kind of looks really good, at least on the screen here. It looks pretty good with that blue versus
it
the
looks
yellow.
pretty good with the blue. So let's go with that. And that's kind of getting those cyans that we had earlier in the water to show up a little better. So one cool trick here, and I'm going to show everyone that I love working with, is all right. So this color is all throughout. You know, everything in pink is getting that purple color. So this is that purple or magenta, you know, kind of violet, if you will, mask or you know, gradient I put on there. But it's getting in that everything that's red or pink here is getting that effect, and you can see that it's kind of making some of that area up there look a little unnatural. So Lightroom has these really cool, you know, luminosity masks, and so as I click on this guy right here, that's going to be exactly what we saw. But if we're thinking about, like, maybe I just want to take and make the brighter parts of these clouds a little bit of that, you know, violet color in there. So if I take, and this left-hand side, as I slide this over from the left into the right, that's going to take it out of the darks. And when I now uncheck this box, only those areas right in here are going to be getting that effect, and no longer really cool. The shadows. So you can see that, like, that's represented by what's in pink here. So only those brighter parts of the clouds are kind of getting that violet-ish effect. So let me turn this back off, and you know, so right there. And then if we need to tone this guy down a little bit, take the saturation down just a little bit towards the bottom to help that blend in a little better.
I dig it.
And right there, 3 little grad filters. We've taken that photograph from flat and dull, and we've worked with colors that really help, you know, work with that photo. So this, honestly, I would say would be a really great, just kind of, you know, nuts and bolts of color harmony and how to achieve and get the best color in your photograph in just a few clicks. And that secret, you know, that secret little tip that, you know, in Lightroom that I love working with, and that's the Adobe color themes. And so with that, to recap that just real fast, to access that guy, you know, window, extensions, and Adobe color themes, and then you've got it. And when you want to set your color, clicking on the color picker over here on the left, sweeping around in your photograph to find your key color, because that's the color that you want to work off from. Clicking OK, making sure that you have this center box base, you know, the center box ticked, and then click set selected color, and it will set that.
That's great.
You saw those pins reset, and then here, you know, you can, if you want to go, you know, you can keep this super, like, and if you go analogous, like, this will give you the colors on that swatch panel there, how to make this photo look almost like monochromatic in a way. So anyway, that is 101.
Awesome, Joe. That was some really good stuff. I appreciate it. Again, something that I don't use, and I'm guessing a lot of people don't really know about it, like you said, because it's kind of up in that window extension area. And so knowing how to access it and really leverage it, just like you said, with a couple simple clicks in Lightroom to really make your photo pop from a natural color standpoint is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful for sure.
So thanks for walking us through that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So, you know, I love doing this kind of stuff. So, you know, for Adam and myself here, anyone, you know, wanting to ask questions or more about this, reach out, post comments below. You're happy to help fill this in, you know, answer some questions there, because it is a little confusing. You know, color harmony, it gets talked about, but no one really talks about it. So happy to, you know, kind of help address that.
That's awesome. Great. Thanks, man. Yeah. Anything else for this week, or you good?
You know, I think that, I mean, like we kind of discussed, having a little hands-on to kind of start getting some people introduced to, our workflows, I think was perfect. And this was, I thought, like a really fun one.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So
Thanks.
I
Thanks for
would say,
letting me
like,
do it.
yeah, man.
So with that, I will close us out. So again, thanks everyone for tuning in. We appreciate it. You can find us on YouTube at In Focus Videocast. We are also on iTunes, Spotify, all of your favorite to-go podcast places. So go ahead, download us there at In Focus Videocast. And like Joe said, we love kind of sharing some of our knowledge. And so if you have questions about this episode, or if there's other topics that you want us to dive into, please email us at infocusvideocast@gmail.com. I think that's it. I'm looking forward to hearing some feedback from everyone on this episode. And of course, next week, catching back up with you and talking about something else. That'll be fun.
Yeah, man. It's always fun hanging out with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So
Yeah. Sweet.
cool, man. Thanks. Have a good one. And I'll talk to you
Thanks.
soon.
Thanks, everybody. See you
Thanks, everyone,
soon.
for tuning in. Take care.
Yep.
Bye.